at what's called the north entrance to the hole. It's a big gap in the reef, and it's pretty clear that poor little unsuspecting conchs have been crawling over the edge of the hole so often that there's thousands of them down there.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we talk to athletes, adventurers, and business owners from around the world of adventure sports. Whether you're climbing Mount Everest, starting a bike shop, or getting up off your couch to take your kids hiking for the first time, we want you to have the motivation and inspiration you need to chase that next adventure. The Adventure Sports Podcast is brought to you by Camp Crate, the leaders in fully planned self-guided backpacking adventures, as well as backpacking gear rental. You can check them out at campcrate.net. Hey everyone, it is Monday. Hope you did something Adventure Sports Podcast worthy over the weekend. I didn't, so did a little work. But it is currently 5 degrees and snowing like crazy, so didn't really feel like going out. But today's episode is quite literally the opposite of that. It is Underwater with Erika Bergman. If you remember back in early October, we had her on. She was getting ready to dive Submarine, actually. Take literally a small 3-seater submarine with Richard Branson. Yes, that Richard Branson. And Fabien Cousteau, which is Jacques Cousteau's grandson. So if you're familiar with the diver, the very famous Jacques Cousteau, his grandson. So it's pretty cool. Erika got to take them to the bottom of the Belize Blue Hole, which is this sinkhole in the middle of this reef, and it's actually a cave system that's underneath it that used to be above water, or the water level used to not be as high as it is, and a cave was formed, and then once the sea levels rose, this roof of this cave gave out, and it makes pretty much a perfect circle, about 900 feet across, 400 and something feet deep, and it potentially has all these other passageways on the sides that lead to other parts of the cave, but it's a really cool place. The Discovery Channel live streamed it on the Discovery Channel during the expedition, so it was really cool. So if you got to check that out, it was awesome. If not, you can just YouTube it. There's tons of footage, and Erika was the pilot. She was the pilot for this expedition, and it talks about the submarine they use, which is really unique. Talks about random things they found down there and the things they saw and the weird phenomenon that took place. And man, just a really unique experience. Erika's pretty cool, and what she does is really amazing, unique. It's exciting. So I hope you enjoy the conversation to hear about how the expedition went, which took place back in December. So if you are in the middle of the doldrums of winter somewhere, enjoy this tropical, focused, reef, blue, beautiful water podcast episode. Because I would sure love to be there right now. Anyway, any announcements going on? Yeah, so our patrons, if you are not a patron of the show, we'd love you to be. But if you are a patron, I would go in and check your credit card status or check your debit card, whatever you use to pay, because something's going on with Patreon, and like a bunch of cards got declined this past month, and we lost like a third of our patrons. We know you all didn't quit. We didn't get notifications that you stopped your patronage. It just said your card was declined. So if you are, just go in and check. That'd really help us out. If you're not a patron and would like to be, go to patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast, and you can support the show for $1 a month, for $5 a month, for $10 a month, whatever you want. And you get access to extra episodes, which have to do with like adventure planning, gear review. We don't necessarily do giveaways on there because that's not acceptable by Patreon standards, but we do book sharing and patron-only episodes. So if you'd like to check that out, go on there, sign up and you'll have access to all that. Also, if you're $5 a month or more, you can be on the show. We do patron only sections of the show now. So if you're a patron and we want to hear about your adventure background, your stories, and what you'd like to do, get on there and sign up. Also, this month's sponsor is Peak Refuel. Y'all have heard me talk about them. Guys, sponsors make this show happen. That and Patreon. We would love if you would support our sponsors if you are in need of or would like to try their products or services. This month, like I said, Peak Refuel. They make freeze-dried meals for backpacking, for hunting, for fishing. I use them myself for some guided trips I did last year, and we also use them in Camp Crate. And that is the other sponsor this month. Camp Crate backpacking trips, pre-planned, all-inclusive, all over the country. They ship all the gear, food, permits, everything right to your front door. Use the gear, send it back when you're done. It's that easy. You don't even have to clean it. That's how convenient it is. It's a great way to try backpacking before you invest in all the gear. Or if you already have your own gear, they have a lot of itineraries that are already pre-built. So get in touch and they can help you out. Oh, also, I forgot the code for Peak Refuel is ASP20 for 20% off. Let's see, anything else? I know how much you guys love me rambling on and on and on. Well, that's it. All right, let's get to the episode. So how did it go overall? What was it like?
Yeah, it was definitely, there's a big learning curve for us. It was the first time that we've run an expedition as this particular team. And so, there's always the inevitable hurdles of working on the ocean, and we just took every single one of them in stride, I think. Wow.
So you guys were able to actually, would you, for the listeners that didn't catch our first beforehand episode, because we've gotten a lot of new listeners actually in like the last few months, like a lot. It's really grown, which is awesome. Could you just go over?
Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, you too. Yeah, your achievements huge compared to that, but could you just go over what you guys did and what was the goal, and did you succeed?
Yeah, definitely. So in November of 2018, we shipped our little 3-person submarine Stingray 500 across, frosty North America on the back of a truck, and then we put it on a ship in Texas, and we went by boat to Lighthouse Reef, which is 40 miles off the coast of Belize. And we were going to a very specific spot in Lighthouse Reef called the Great Blue Hole. It's this huge oceanic sinkhole in the middle of the ocean. It is exactly just a great blue hole. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, pretty creative naming, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I think Jacques Cousteau named it, so you can credit one of the greats.
Okay.
Yeah. We had a couple of missions. Sort of our twofold goal, I guess, was to map the Great Blue Hole using super high resolution sonar, and then also to take people worldwide on this journey with us through broadcast television.
Now, you guys live streamed it on the Discovery Channel. Did that go successfully?
Well, yeah, of course it did. We did do a live broadcast. Of course, the ocean is the ocean. We had big Caribbean-style winter storms. So the first week we were down there, the wind was blowing really, really hard and just making all of our prep work, just scattering all of our prep work. We just had to hold tight at sea before we could actually go in and prep for it. So when it actually came down to live stream day, everything, we basically had 1 or 2 days to dive and prep for it. So we had, bless his heart, Richard Branson came out a day early to sort of help us with it, basically help with the reorganization based on weather. And we actually dove the day before the live stream. And then on the day of the live stream, we broadcast live from the ship. And we didn't have the big fiber optic tether down because it would have just gotten chopped up by the ship moving and the waves rolling. So we broadcast live for 2 hours from the Great Blue Hole in Belize, and we showcased footage from the dive the day before with Richard Branson and Fabien Cousteau, all the while on a huge rocking ship. And what you couldn't see is that the entire live broadcast crew was seasick in the background. But yeah, we made it work.
Gosh, that is so crazy. And now you were the chief pilot of that, correct?
Yeah, I piloted that one. We have 3 pilots at Aquatica Submarines right now. And so we were actually there for 2 full weeks of diving after the live broadcast, and we take turns piloting. But on that one, I was the lucky pick to pilot with Branson and Cousteau, just because the plan had been to have this fiber optic tether running out, and so just experience-wise, it made sense for me to do that one, and it was great fun. I mean, Richard Branson is very chill, and Fabien Cousteau is pretty entertaining, so we just had a fun 2-hour dive together.
That's awesome. Now, yeah, I don't know much about Fabien's personality, but, Richard Branson is obviously, he seems super laid back. I've listened to some interviews, and I'm like, wow, he's very approachable. I'm sure he made you feel comfortable. Were you at all nervous? I mean, those are 2 big names that you're piloting in a hole that's never been done before. I mean, that's got to be tough.
Not really. I love that stuff. And we did have a reconnaissance dive the day before, so I knew the hole pretty well. I kind of had a good mental map of it from a reconnaissance dive the day before, and they were both so chill that we just had a good time. I kind of go on to autopilot and just have nice conversations with them and show them the things that I've learned about the hole and learn things that they've maybe read about and are finally seeing for the first time. So we just had a very, calm and collected dive. That's usually how it is. Even if somebody thinks they're nervous at the surface, as soon as they go underwater, it's so dark and quiet and calm that you just go into this, it's like a temple. The whole underwater world is this giant temple.
Man, that just sounds so fantastic, because there's so much of it, the underwater world, and it's also freezing cold here in Denver today. So that just sounds somewhere tropical like that. In that kind of, I know what you mean. It's like when you're scuba diving or snorkeling. It's just this trance it puts you in. It's wow. That's awesome. So, what did you discover?
From the beginning, there has been, there's a nice precedent set by these technical scuba divers and by Jacques Cousteau himself. Jacques Cousteau, when he kind of made the hole famous, he actually took one of his little submarines down for a quick, he didn't pilot it, but one of his guys did, for a quick little, 10-minute boot to the bottom. So they have seen it. And then a group of scuba divers from the Cambrian Foundation went down for a series of quick dives, but they're all limited in bottom time. And so going back now, 30 years later, we were able to spend extensive bottom time and really map the bottom and see things that nobody has seen before. So we just kind of took the foundation that other people have laid and added modern technology and extended bottom time. So there were definitely a few discoveries down there that nobody has ever seen before. And they were, a little bit life-changing.
Okay, how so? That's a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was cool. I think the first part of the dive is really quite fun. I mean, people are expecting it to be, it's the Caribbean, it's so tropical. So yes, you descend immediately right down this kind of reef edge, but the water at the reef edge is the murkiest, I would say. So it's kind of this like milky view at a beautiful, colorful coral reef, but visibility is not great. And then you go down to about 130 feet, and that's the max that the scuba divers usually go. So scuba divers will go down, take a quick look at the stalactite caverns that are down there and then race back up to the surface because they've used up their bottom time, basically. And these caverns are huge flow stones. They're stalactites that formed back when this was a dry cave, when sea level was 500 feet shallower, before the last, giant glacial maximum melted 14,000 years ago. So when this was a cave during the Ice Age, all these stalactites formed, and they're probably, oh gosh, they're like 40 and 50 feet tall. They're huge stalactites. And then as sea level has risen, the entire Great Blue Hole has slowly been kind of chewed up as sea level has risen and wind and wave and tides have eroded down this limestone. And eventually the top of the cave collapsed in, and that's what formed this huge sinkhole. It's a giant underwater cave that has been filled in by rising sea level. So these stalactites are maybe 100,000 years old, and they're pretty majestic.
I've been in a handful of caves, and it is an awesome, in every sense of the word, experience, but never underwater. And for one of these caves to have stalactites so big, oh my gosh, that's so old. It takes so much time for those to form on top of, there's a lot of processes going on. Obviously, it wasn't underwater at some point, formed this cave, and then through so much time filled up with water, and then the processes that have taken place after that. I'm sure it was just, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Even for someone that's so experienced as you, it's just like unreal. I'm sure it was absolutely unreal to be there.
Yeah, it was definitely an unusual geologic feature, I'd say. And the stalactites, they've been underwater for so long that they are covered in marine growth too. So it's like big stalactite cave rocks, but then they're covered in layer upon layer upon layer of algae, and I don't know what kind of stuff is growing on there, but they're kind of like, they're even thicker than they formed as stone because they're covered in all of this marine life.
So was there a network of caves down there that you could see into other passages, or was it pretty much just a cylindrical hole straight down to the bottom?
Yeah, well, we were looking for networks. It seems very reasonable that if this formed as a giant cavern, that there would be a network kind of affiliated with it. We were kind of using our high resolution sonars to try and see deeper into the caverns, and it's pretty likely that they do go a ways in, but the channels between them are small enough that we certainly couldn't go pilot into them or fit through them or anything like that. But we did every once in a while, right around that big stalactite area, it's called the South Grotto.
Yeah.
Did feel like a teeny tiny movement of water. Not necessarily a surface-driven current. It's a little bit too deep for that, but some sort of little movement of water. So I think there is water flowing around this huge cave network, and Lighthouse Reef is, I think, 12 miles long, and so it's likely that there's caverns all along it. This is just one that the roof is collapsed in, so we can see into it. But presumably, it runs a huge length of the Belize Barrier Reef system.
Wow. So no successful, maybe some places that might have had some passageways, but nothing definitive?
Yeah, not really definitive from our perspective. We were there with our sonar equipment, and we created a big 3D map of the hole. We used 3 different styles of sonar to do it, and overlaid all of this different type of data on top of each other. We had what's called point cloud data. We had scanning sonar data. We had a kind of multi-beam data, and we put them all together and created a map. So we do have a map of Blue Hole now, but the sonar works like sight. If there's something blocking your view, it does the same thing to sound. It blocks the sound. And so we can't see past the stalactites with the sonar because the sound just reflects back off the stalactites. So probably in there. But in our map, it's stalactites, cave walls, and the bottom contours.
Wow. And what about the bottom? Was it pretty flat or not?
No, the bottom was actually, that bottom had a lot of interesting features. There was, so around 300 feet deep, there's this layer of acid. There's a layer of hydrogen sulfide that you can see. And when scuba divers go through it, they can physically smell it. It smells like rotten eggs. It's sulfur.
Oh my god.
And so we pass through this hydrogen sulfide layer, and on the bottom, there's absolutely no oxygen. There's no life below the acid. And the bottom had a lot of interesting features. Everything from, in one case, a huge fallen stalactite. You can tell that as something shifted, a stalactite broke off, and it's laying on the bottom. And an old gravity core from some sort of scientific expedition, decades ago. There's this huge steel tube sticking out of the bottom, like very man-made steel tube. And, somebody lost a gravity core when they were trying to punch through the layers of sediment. And there's also this big berm of sand that runs like a ring all the way around the inside, from the way that the sand pours into the hole. So you can imagine kind of, like a kid playing in the sand. If you make a hole underneath a pile of sand with your hand, it creates a hole, and there's sort of this waterfall of sand that falls down from the outside. So it's creating this giant steep berm. And we were actually able to get between the rock wall and the berm and pilot in this trench almost. And the trench was pretty interesting because it was like driving through with giant mountain ranges, 2 feet to your left and 2 feet to your right, that just kind of go straight up, and you're just in this little channel, and the whole world is above you. It's kind of eerie and also geologically a very fun place to pilot.
I'm sure you have tried some freeze-dried and dehydrated meals before, but I promise you've never had anything close to as good as Peak Refuel. They make freeze-dried meals, which is different than dehydrated. It takes way less water to cook. It cooks a lot faster, and they cook the meals before they put everything together. A lot of companies just throw all the ingredients in there, and when you cook it, it's the first time it's ever been cooked. With them, all the flavors have cooked together. It's super tasty, and you can get 20% off by going to peakrefuel.com and using the code at checkout ASP20. Seriously, give them a shot for whatever adventures that you have planned this year. So that was one of my questions actually, was did you find anything man-made? Because boats are just free to ride over this if they want to, and there's tons of boats out in that area, correct?
Yeah, lots of dive boats, so they go in for a little morning dive in Lighthouse Reef. Lots of scuba dive boats, and it is a protected area, so you're not actually supposed to drive across the hole unless you're have some very specific scientific purpose like us. We drove straight across the hole a lot. But there were little man-made things. There were, fair amount of lost scuba equipment, weight belts, fins. We even found, there's, a couple plastic bottles, those inevitable kind of things. But we even found a GoPro in an underwater housing with one of those little floating handles, laying in the sand, and we collected it. We scooped it up. We brought it back up to the surface.
Were you able to salvage anything from it?
Well, obviously it smelled like ozone. The water had crushed it, and it was completely burnt up and black and carbonized and gross and disgusting. And we popped the SD card out, put it in a computer, and lo and behold, we have some random guy's scuba diving footage and then a video where they dropped the GoPro into the hole.
No way. So
So,
what did it look like they were doing before? Were they on a boat or something?
yeah, we even know what scuba dive boat they were on. So we're trying to find this guy and return his SD card from 400 feet down. How about that for a recovery story?
Yeah, we need to. I mean, I'm sure GoPro has a list of their like craziest stories. They've got to find out about that because, I mean, that's what the resiliency that it takes to survive. That who know how long was it down there? Do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, the GoPro, the SD card has the dates. So we know exactly the day and even the time that it fell.
Oh my gosh. Has it, I mean, has it been a while?
A year. It's been one
Oh
year.
my God. That's about, I mean, I was mountain biking in the mountains last year and on this very, not very heavily used trail. And I found a GoPro on the trail, on the side of the trail. And it had been there a few years. And I popped the SD card out and it still worked. All the footage was there. You can see right when it fell off, but there was no information to find the owner.
Oh,
But
yeah.
man, those things are crazy, crazy strong. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Pretty fun things to find down there. There was a site on the bottom that as pilots, we navigate mostly by sight and by sonar because visibility is so often limited. It's basically limited to the maximum reach of our lights in a very, very dark place. And so that can be anywhere. If the water is really murky, that can be 0 feet. Or if the water is very clear, that can be 80 to 100 feet. And so we're down there navigating, and we've actually got 2 submarines on this expedition. We're piloting with another submarine in the water, and we have underwater telephones so we can talk to them acoustically. It kind of sounds like garbled, like a tin can on a string, we're at 200 feet,
What?
And so we make these names for places so that we can tell the other pilots where to go. And there was one spot on the bottom that we called the Conch Graveyard. And it's a wall on this big berm of sand, that big ridge of sand I was talking about that runs the entire interior. And there's a spot right at what's called the north entrance to the hole. It's a big gap in the reef, and it's pretty clear that poor little unsuspecting conchs have been crawling over the edge of the hole so often that there's thousands of them down there. And it's completely anoxic. There's no oxygen. So they kind of try to crawl out, but they're 400 feet deep in a steep-sided cave on the bottom where there's no oxygen. So, obviously they don't last very long. So there's one spot kind of near the north entrance that we call the Conch Graveyard. And it's just little things you learn about a site that make it so clear, this sort of connection between your experience as a submarine pilot and submarine crew and the science that makes something true. We obviously the winds are kind of northeast most of the time, and so this entrance is probably the heaviest input of sand because that's where the wind is blowing from all the time. And it's not until we got down there and saw this giant pile of conch and sand that we made the connection. We realized this is the most predominant wind direction. That's why the sand is falling in the hole here. It's probably sand shifting that runs the conchs over the edge. They might not be crawling over by themselves. It's these weird little connections like that seem so small, but are so dramatic when you're down there and you realize them. It's these little light bulbs that go off.
Yeah, I mean, that's really sad, but it makes perfect sense. You know what I mean? It's like these poor things. They don't know. They're not looking around. They just are going off the edge, or like you said, get kind of shifted over the edge by the currents and the wind, and there's literally no hope once they get out. And there's so many. That is something that you would never expect, but once you know it's there, it makes perfect sense.
Exactly, and it's just an expedition like this is just 1,000 little realizations like that.
Okay, well, so what are some more of that of things that were like, oh my gosh, that is so weird, but this hole is creating this phenomenon?
Well, I mean, the cool thing about the hole is that it is completely isolated from the powerful erosion of ocean currents. It's like this measuring stick that's preserved from the disturbance of time because there's no current that gets down to 400 feet. It's completely stagnant. The walls of the hole are this perfect record of sea level rise. And so as you're going up and down the walls, you're looking at their calcium carbonate walls. Basically, the way that all of this stuff formed is reef grew in what was then the shallows, let's call it 10 feet of water. Sea level rose, so that reef kind of got crushed and new reef grew on top of it. And again, over and over and over again for thousands of years, for the last 14,000 years, reef has been growing on reef as ocean level's been rising. So the walls of this cave at different levels are thick layers of calcium carbonate. They're thick layers of coral and shell and rock. And you can see these embedded, they might be, you can tell if it's like, 2 feet thick, then it was probably a pretty short period of time that sea level was at that layer, because maybe 2 feet of coral growth compounded down in that rock was, 20 or 30 years where sea level was at that level. Then you go up this very steep vertical limestone wall, and then there might be a layer of calcium carbonate that's 10 feet thick. And you think, wow, sea level must have been there for 5 times longer. And what you see in this record of the hole is that sea level doesn't rise gradually. It rises in steps. And the steps could last many thousands of years, or they could last, a few decades. And so there are certain parts of the hole where we can see that sea level can rise as much as 100 feet in 100 years. And then it's followed by a very long period of time where it doesn't move at all. And so what does that tell us for our future? Are we planning on the oceans rising slowly and building levees and walls and protecting our coastlines, assuming that sea level is going to be gradual? Because what the hole tells us is that's not the case. It's going to rise dramatically, and then it'll be stagnant for a while. So I think when you really look at it, things are, in terms of sea level rise, for us right now as humans, things are going to get worse before they get better. And if we're aware of how much it's going to rise, maybe we can make some plans accordingly.
I guess I did. I knew that was one of the big reasons, but I didn't know why the blue hole was such a good litmus test. So thanks for explaining that. That makes sense. And I know Discovery Channel had tweeted about that during the live stream, and Richard Branson obviously talked about it. So you saw places where the water had risen that quickly in that few of years. Do you know what was happening?
Oh, yeah.
What was happening during that time, and how long ago was that?
It's all different. I mean, there's white papers that are written up on this. You can read all about the time periods that all of this exactly happened. There's several different layers of it, and right now we're sending our sonar scan. Part of the reason we did the scan is to measure the depth of these terraces into the wall and their frequency up the wall and their distances apart. And then geologists can take a look at this new data that we're providing them and really put numbers on the evidence that we can see. So there will be a lot of really cool follow-up from this.
So it was the world was warming at that time, obviously, dramatically.
Well, it's been warming. It's been warming for the last 14,000 years since the last glacial maximum. The world goes through ice ages, every we've had 4 ice ages just in our epic. We're in this sort of quaternary epoch. we've had 4 big ice ages, and the one that ended about 14,000 years ago was really just a little one.
Yeah, yeah. That's absolutely terrifying to think.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it's just the whole is just a good reminder that we are, we're just we're a very short period at the of time, in the middle of a very long history of a planet. And, yeah, it just sort of, you sit on the bottom at 400 feet and you're looking up at this pale blue circle of light that you can just barely see above you, and just kind of realizing how much life has gone on since the beginning of life on planet Earth. And it's kind of cool, everything has led to this moment for you. And that's a cool realization too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. That's, it's like looking at, layers of sediment, or if you want to take it to a human aspect, layers of cities, and these ancient cities, maybe in the Middle East or in Rome, and seeing how many feet of literally stuff gets piled on top of itself. And for this whole 400 feet of life, of coral growing over itself, I mean, I'm sure it makes you feel incredibly insignificant, but also comforting in the knowing that how resilient the world is, and how precious it is. It's life is resilient, but we also have an incredible responsibility of not taking it for granted and not doing anything to disrupt it, the possibility that it continues.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so amazing. So did the expedition achieve everything it set out to? And was there any unforeseen achievements maybe that were like, wow, this happened because we did this?
Yeah. Well, we did achieve most of our goals. We got a lot of people down on dives. We went into the Great Blue Hole with the full support of the Belize government, and in partnership with the Belize Audubon Society, which organizes and runs that UNESCO World Heritage Site. So we went in as a partner, rather than just kind of a user of somebody else's, precious site. And that was really big for the Belize government and for the Belize people, because, tourists come and just kind of use the hole and leave, and don't think about who's doing the work behind protecting it, the conservation, the policy. So we went in really planning to deliver them all of this data, support them by bringing awareness to the hole and what we found in it, and tell stories about it. So our big goal was, being a positive collaborator in a place like that, and setting the stage to do the same thing all around the world. So that was our number one, mission objective, and we definitely accomplished that. There was a group of students from the local university that we were really hoping to take on dives, but the weather turned so nasty that to get from Belize City out to the Great Blue Hole is about a 2.5 to 3 hour boat ride in like really nasty seas. Everyone would have been seasick and so uncomfortable. So they didn't come out for their dives, but we did take local Coast Guard and members of different NGOs that were already out in Lighthouse Reef, people from Mar Alliance, and it was just great to take all of these unique NGO and government officials down to see something that they've been working so hard to protect from the surface, and this is the first time that they've actually gotten to lay eyes on it in a way that they, that nobody has ever offered them before. So that was a really, really cool thing.
Time for a quick message break. So, this show is brought to you by Camp Crate. They specialize in self-guided, pre-planned, all-inclusive backpacking adventures, as well as trip advice, and as well as camping gear rental. So if you're in need of any of that stuff, reach out to them at campcrate.net. Very helpful and very knowledgeable. It's a great way to try backpacking for the first time or to scroll through their list of itineraries if you need some ideas on where to go. They will literally send you all your gear, your food, permits, coffee even, in a box to your front door. Use it for your trip. When you're done, return it with the pre-printed included return label. It's that easy. It makes backpacking and getting into the backcountry very approachable, very simple. Give them a shot. Now back to the episode. That's incredible. Nothing sets your heart and mind to align to protect something or to do some sort of project than when you physically get to see it. You can give money to something all day long, but until you go see the problem you're solving, you're a lifetime. You're committed at that point.
Oh, totally. And so some of these people we took down completely pro bono, but a lot of the expedition was paid for by sponsorship. Some of it was in-kind sponsorship, and some of it was actual sponsorship dollars. And some of the folks that came had paid for this experience. They were enthusiastic about ocean conservation, enthusiastic about the experience of diving in a submarine, going down 400 feet in an oceanic sinkhole. And so some of the people we had out there were wealthy individuals who want to see their money go to good work, and they want to see where it's going. We took them on dives, and after that, they're regular committed members of funding ocean conservation. Every new place that we go for conservation purposes, they're going to come out, they're going to help with the sponsorship, and they're going to get to go on a dive. And so it's really gratifying, I think, for people who are in the philanthropy kind of percentage of the world. They want to see their money do good stuff, and this was a way for them to see their money do some really, really cool work. So we've made a lot of repeat sponsor clients for conservation as well, and that feels pretty good.
Absolutely. So going from this, what other work does this project involve for you, or is your role in it complete? And what does the future hold for you? What are some things you're looking forward to?
Yeah, well, it's a couple things. We're still doing follow-up on the whole. We've got all this beautiful media, and so now, if you spend time on our YouTube channel or our Instagram, we're just now editing together all of these great little clips from all of the media that we collected, and writing articles, giving talks, especially to schools, and then putting all of this data. The data that we collected is all going to be available. It's going through a blockchain. So basically, you just get a password, and then you can access all the data. So we're getting all of that stuff set up so we can give the data to anyone who wants it. It's going to be this beautiful 3D sonar data, and you could do anything you want with it. You could 3D print a coffee table, or you could do anything. Make it into a 3D printed coffee mug with a great blue hole. So there's
crazy.
lots of cool stuff that we're doing like that too. But I'd say we're also, this one, Belize is, we're done. We're finished with that expedition, and now the submarine is back in Texas, and we are running full speed ahead for our next expedition. So we're getting everything prepped to go down and get the submarine ready to get on a different ship, because our next expedition is in April, and we're going to the British Virgin Islands.
Oh, wow. That's sounds like a tough place to go.
Yeah.
So what are you doing down there?
Yeah. We're headed to BVI. Again, we're doing it in partnership with a bunch of NGOs, including a couple supported by Richard Branson. He loves our submarine. He thinks it's awesome. We're doing some more work with Branson. I don't know if you remember Hurricane Irma in 2017.
Oh yeah.
But it was the biggest hurricane that has ever hit the Atlantic. Biggest recorded hurricane. And it really ripped apart the BVIs. It ripped apart, huge chunks of Puerto Rico. It ripped up a lot of the Eastern Caribbean. And there was a lot of reef conservation that had been going on in the last 10 years, because in 2010 there was a massive coral bleaching event. 90% of the corals in British Virgin Islands were bleached. People have been restoring them, and then this hurricane rolls through and just ripped them out by the roots. So we're going to create a baseline survey of a, freshly damaged reef, so that subsequent surveys can quantify how much it's recovered and how quickly. So we'll continue to survey it, every few years as a big scientific baseline study.
So you say you keep talking about the submarine. Now, this submarine, can you tell us about what makes this thing unique? Because I read a lot about it, but you said Richard Branson also likes it. So what's so different about it?
Yeah, well, it's it's called the Stingray 500, and we're currently building two more right now. They're called the S3s, so they fit 3 people, and essentially it's this big acrylic sphere. So the 3 passengers who are sitting inside can look around in absolutely every direction. It's like going to the aquarium, to the biggest glass wall in the aquarium, and being able to look everywhere. And so that's kind of the main feature of the submarine that makes it just wicked cool. And then it's also really easy to hand the controls over to new pilots or passengers. The single pilot in the center can be controlling, really critical features, life support and buoyancy. But the submarine is piloted. We just put in a gamepad controller, so it's like an Xbox controller.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so it's really easy to physically drive it. You're sitting there next to someone, and you can be giving them, mild directions about where to go and speed and kind of the mass of a vehicle moving through water. And they get a really good grasp of how to pilot the vehicle very quickly without obviously having to worry about the minutia of piloting that the actual pilot in the center is dealing with. So it's really a fun submarine. I gave almost everyone who wants to an opportunity to drive. I let Fabien drive when we were on our way to the Blue Hole, and I gave Branson the controls at the end, and he was so excited. He was telling me, and he's British, right? So he's, I'm the submarine skipper now. Now I'm the submarine skipper. You can be my co-pilot. He was just having a great time.
Oh, I can hear that. I can hear him saying that.
Yeah. Didn't want to give the controls back. And that's one of the cool features about it too, is how maneuverable it is. It just makes sense to a lot of people. And then we have a lot of safety features, things under the hood of the car, so to speak, that make it a very safe vehicle and really high operational standards. So safety is paramount. And as a team, we have, procedures and mechanical things in place in the submarine that the passengers never really see, but make us as a team feel really good about piloting it and going out to explore the world. So that's one of the coolest things. The gamepad. People are into the gamepad.
What a unique thing to have in, just to keep the visitor in mind, the guest in mind. There's nothing you're gonna do like saying I controlled a submarine somewhere. Like, how cool is that? That's really smart of you guys to put that together. You've got to have the coolest job. One of the coolest jobs I've ever heard of.
I do like it. There are little things that come up with it. So, okay, just between you and me and all of your listeners.
Yeah, like tens of thousands.
This was the first time we had run. This is the first time that we had run with the gamepad, and so we, it's just got a little USB plug-in. It's hardwired. So it's a little USB that plugs into our brand. It's called a SCUF controller. It's just kind of a high-end gamepad controller. And I'm sitting out there in Belize. My passengers are already offloaded. We've had a great dive, and our procedure for meeting up with the ship to get picked out of the water by the A-frame is is pretty intense. Because of the wind out there, while we were out there, the ship is swinging. And this is a 175-foot steel ship. I mean, this thing is swinging fast. And so there's a tiny little 45-second window when it's at the apex of its swing, when the submarine can approach, get taglines on, get hooked up very quickly to lift the submarine. And we got really good at it. It was definitely a solid procedure. And but it meant that the submarine has to wait about 4 minutes for the ship to go through an entire swing cycle before it gets to that one particular apex where you're going to go in and get picked up. So I'm sitting out there, I'm enjoying the sun, I'm looking around, I've got the gamepad. I set the gamepad down on the little, like, kind of on the hatch ring, and I'm just adjusting a little cover here and there, and the USB cord came detached and the gamepad controller fell in the water.
Oh my god.
Which means I just watched it like plunk. Oh, there it goes. Which means, hey guys, I just dropped the controller in the water.
No.
But
oh no.
Obviously it's not good. But we have so many procedures backed up, planned for in like worst case scenario, that within about 2.5 minutes, I had a brand new gamepad controller plugged in and was on my way to the ship. It was no big deal because we have planned for every single possible eventuality. And in most cases, like in this case, it was 2.5 minutes. I called them up. I told them I dropped the controller in the water, and then I had a new one in my hand, and we were good to go. So it's, we definitely learned things on expedition, but we also feel pretty good about the prep work that we did before we headed into a situation like that.
No kidding. I just can't wait for the scuba diver to be like, what the hell's an Xbox controller doing down here?
Yeah. Well, we recovered it.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny.
We wanted to take a look at it, so we recovered it. We didn't want to leave any plastic in the ocean.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, it's yeah, that's good because I was at the beach just this week over the break, and people just think the ocean's just one big trash can. Like they can just throw something in there and it's forgotten forever. So I'm glad that, you have that kind of integrity to say, no one saw that. This place is enormous. This will not make a difference, but it does. So cool. Well, congratulations. Yeah. That's got to be a highlight of your life so far. But by no means is it going to be, I'm sure you're going to do dozens and dozens of more expeditions, if not hundreds like this, that are just as epic and just as awesome. So congrats.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, it's too cool. And so if people want to follow you guys and what you're doing and what Aquatica Submarines is doing, how can they do that?
Well, we take great pride in our Instagram. So it's at Aquatica Subs is our Instagram. And our YouTube is Aquatica Submarines. You can find us on Facebook. We have a webpage, aquaticasubmarines.com. And that's kind of where we're taking our pride and joy, creating little media sizzles for everyone to see what it's like to be a submarine crew, and put a little behind the scenes stuff in there. We like interaction. If people send us messages like, "Hey, send a picture of what it looks like, doing this or doing this," we like that kind of thing. We're a small crew, and so interaction kind of makes us feel like our crew was a little bit bigger. So we're very open to that. And those are our main little spots, be in articles and that kind of thing. But
yeah, I mean, well, what's so cool about it is what you're doing so visually captivating that it's perfect for Instagram. Like I'm scrolling through it right now, and obviously the submarine itself is gorgeous, and that acrylic dome sphere that you're in is just so cool, and everything it captures is just gorgeous. So from the machinery itself to the places that you're taking it, it's really awesome just to scroll through what you've seen in it. That's so cool. So congratulations on all the work and the effort and the successful mission.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch around BVI.
Yeah, please do. Like we'd love to. I mean, we don't have any other submarine pilot that we talk to on a regular basis, so you've got that market on this show all to yourself.
All right, I'll take that.
Oh man, yeah, you've got it. And no one's gonna beat what you've already done. So it's all yours. Well, good. We'll reach back out and excited to get this up. Thanks again for being on the show. Sure.
And yeah, I look forward to following along. Congrats on your podcast growing.
Oh, it's well, when we keep having guests like you, it's people want to hear an interesting story like this. So it's really, it's a lot to do with who we have on the guests. So thank you.
Sure. Thanks very much.
All right. Have a good one. And hope you don't get overwhelmed with all that media coverage.
That's awesome.
All right.
Thanks.
See ya. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
First of all, thank you so much for listening to the episode. Secondly, if you would like to get in touch, you can leave us a voicemail at 812-MAIL-POD. You can also send us an email, info@adventuresportspodcast.com. Get a hold of us on Facebook, Instagram. Contact us on the website. There's just 1,000 ways to do it. If you know somebody that would make a good guest for the show, whether it's you or somebody you know with a really cool story or background or does an interesting sport, get in touch. We'd love to have them on. Also, if you'd like to be a patron, aka a supporter of the show, patreon.com/Adventure Sports Podcast. You can sign up for as little as $1 a month. You can sign up for $5 a month. And lastly, thank you to our sponsors whose messages follow right now. If you want to save 20% off the best backpacking food on planet Earth, go to peakrefuel.com and at checkout, use the code ASP20. So after all of this outdoor talk, if you're looking to plan your own getaway, head to backpacktribe.com and get ready for your next adventure. They have customized gear bundles and free shipping, and they'll be able to get you ready for any adventure that you want to tackle. Check them out, backpacktribe.com.